when I said, like, can I do this in a year? And your answer was basically, I don't know. I don't know you. You might be
Yeah.
terrible. Maybe I need to do LeetCode. Maybe you need to do these exercises from this book. And for, I don't know, a couple of days, I convinced myself that's what I needed to do and started going down that path. And then caught myself and said, hold on, no, I'm going to go back to what has been working this whole time. I applied to 12 total jobs and got one.
So we met a year ago in May 2024. 2 months ago, you were still in academia, a professor of religion and philosophy, and now you just finished your first week at Pinterest. I
Hmm.
wanted to grab some time to chat with you about what's happened since a lot of things have happened since then and how this all came together. To start, can you briefly talk about your background and like maybe how did you end up becoming a professor?
I graduated after 2.5 years of college, and I knew that I just like wanted to keep doing more school. I just wanted more of it. And so I finished and I went straight on to grad school. I did my master's at Notre Dame in what is called historical theology, which is basically just like reading old books all of the time, like interpreting old books. And then I took a year off and did some like teaching at the college level to kind of see if I liked it, and then went back for the PhD. And so I was in grad school at Notre Dame from about 2006 to 2015, a little bit on and off doing the master's and the PhD. I It was all I really wanted to do. There was never really an off ramp. Like it was as soon as I finished one round of school, it was applications for the next round of school. PhDs take a long time, so I just kind of worked through it. It was all I wanted to do.
Okay, so you finished your degree, your PhD at Notre Dame in 2015.
Yep.
Were you still pumped about being a professor at that time? Because I think
Oh,
a lot of people
100%.
burn out. Okay.
No, no, no. There was nothing. I could not have been happier. And I landed at this great place. It was the kind of place that I'd always daydreamed about teaching. It's like small liberal arts college environment. So, small classes, animated students. It wasn't like this cutthroat elite institution where everybody's just trying to beat everybody else or get the best job as soon as they're out of school. It's just people who are living their lives and like trying to explore the world. And I got to sit down and talk with them about what I still think are some of the most important questions in life about like what does it mean to be a good person? What does it mean to be a friend? What does it mean to like what is the world about? How does the world come to exist? Like I just got to sit down and talk with 18 to 22-year-olds about this all the time, and I loved it. I loved it for a long time. I still love it. It was in a lot of ways a really hard profession to leave, and we could talk about it if you want. We can talk about why I ended up leaving it, uh, but no, I loved it then, and I loved it throughout.
So I guess the obvious question is, and you've been alluding to it, is you have this great job, you're on this path that you wanted to be on since high school,
Hmm.
and at one point you get tenure too.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly. This was like
what?
one of the things that made this such an unthinkable transition in a lot of ways is that uh, at this point, anybody who knows anything about higher ed and the job market in higher ed knows that tenure track jobs are like lottery tickets. It is increasingly hard to get. Fewer and fewer schools are making space for this stuff, especially in the humanities. Humanities disciplines are just not thriving as schools professionalize more and more. And I was lucky enough to get a really great job. I got a tenure track position. I got tenure. I had all of the job security I could have dreamt of. And so it was a hard thing to think about giving up. Almost nobody does. I think the core elements of it were that college is changing. I mean, higher education is just changing really rapidly. Colleges are professionalizing more and more. Students come in knowing that their prime priority, given the amount of money they're paying in, is to get a high-paying job as quickly as possible. And the kind of cultural environment is militating against the kinds of questions that I find it most interesting to help students ask. And so it felt more and more like I was fighting the culture. And colleges are also just a really hard place to it's not good for careers. It's not a good job market. You get to pick between any given year in the job market for my field, there are maybe 10 positions open in the country. And you take a stab at those 10 positions, and if you don't get it, good luck. And you don't get to choose where you're moving. Nothing, right? So there were a lot of factors like that where I started to wish for a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more openness, and just new challenges.
I think it sounds like something I felt a lot too, is you kind of almost fantasize about something and then you get it and then it's the
Yeah.
reality of it. So I guess it makes sense that it's surprising, but it makes sense that why you would want to leave. But how did you decide what you were going to do next? Like where, yeah, I guess was programming, how did that become the thing?
It was unexpected even to me. When I first started to think seriously about leaving academia, I was thinking about making a jump to things that were much closer in spirit. I was thinking about libraries. I was thinking about secondary education, like going to the high schools. But I had a really kind of serendipitous conversation with a friend um, who had also made a pretty dramatic career transition, who'd gone through and like studied music theory and composition, like done a master's degree, worked as a composer and worked as a producer, and then dropped it all and moved into software. And I sat down for coffee with him one day, not because I was interested in software, but because I was interested in what it felt like to like leave behind another career so that you'd invested so much in and just like how he thought through that psychologically. And he ended up saying, "Well, hey man, you should actually think about software. This is like maybe this would be a an interesting path for you." And it had not occurred to me at that point, but it did scratch an itch for me because back when I was in high school, I thought for a minute that I would want to do that. I'd tried to learn a little bit of programming when I was a kid. And so it sounded, I was kind of primed for it to sound more interesting. And so I decided to take a few weeks just kind of scratching around and figuring out what I could on the internet. So I spent a little bit of time just kind of going through some online tutorials and seeing if this kind of thing would be fun and was hooked pretty quickly.
What were you doing exactly?
Yeah, I found this site called the Odin Project, that is a kind of open source learning curriculum. And it was fine. I think like it was the thing that scratched the itch at first. It gave me some stuff to work on. It gave me some immediate sense of progress. But I ran into a wall pretty quickly where I just didn't feel like I was getting the guidance I needed, or I feel like it felt a little bit like a fire hose of information. And so I found myself kind of poking around more broadly, like looking for other resources on the internet that might be more helpful. I was looking into boot camps a little bit and like got on some information lists about that. But then eventually, and I wish I remember how at this point, I don't remember how I found you guys, but eventually I stumbled on Watch and Code and got on your mailing list.
Okay, so you don't remember how you found Watch and Code, but
Mm.
somehow you ended up on our website. And I imagine you were searching for a bunch of stuff. So I imagine almost everything you like looked at and dismissed.
Right.
Can you, if you take yourself back to that time, can you remember why you decided to even go and like look into us more versus just ignoring us completely?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, you're right. When I was first getting into it, I was looking at a lot of different options. I mean, I was looking at the boot camps, I was looking at the free curricula that are out there, and y'all's name came up a couple of times, but it was one of a laundry list of options. At that point, I wasn't really ready to pay for anything anyway, so I was just kind of doing whatever was freely available. But I do remember that one of the things that jumped out to me right away about the way that you presented yourselves was that you seemed way more focused than everybody else. I mean, almost all of these boot camps, almost all these curricula claim to teach you everything, and teach you everything really fast, and that just seems fundamentally implausible to me. So it was hard to take very seriously. You guys did not do that. You seem to be very focused. You seem to know more than anybody else what exactly you wanted to teach. So in this kind of paradoxical way, what made you stand out to me is that you claimed to teach less. And that gave me some confidence that you would actually be able to teach the thing you claim to teach and to do it well. I think you also just have you come across as fundamentally serious people, and you are fundamentally serious people who know what you're doing and care deeply about helping other people understand what they're doing. So I think for those reasons, you had kind of risen to the top of the pile for me. And so at a certain point, an email came through and I was like, okay, it's time. Let's make a bet.
Yeah, so I think at that point you started our, the intro course,
Yeah.
and I think you had emailed us wanting to talk to us about your situation, almost like a little
Yeah.
consultation. Where am I
Yeah.
at?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I was like, sure, whatever, we'll do the meeting. And I can talk about what I felt. I found the meeting kind of frustrating. I'll get into detail about it, but
I
how
want
do
to
you
know so bad. I
remember?
want to know I want to know how you remembered it.
But first, how do you remember meeting me for the first time? How that went?
At that point, I was basically trying to figure out whether it was stupid to make a bet on software engineering as a career transition. I had no context, like I spent my whole life in academia. I don't know anything. I'm coming from basically zero from a programming perspective. I don't know anything about the market. I don't know what time it takes to transition into anything. And I needed somebody who was inside. I had my friend who had kind of prompted me into this whole thing, but he is just a very encouraging, optimistic person, and I couldn't totally trust that. So I needed somebody else to say, like, is this possible or not? Is this a doable thing or not? So I was gonna try to get you guys to tell me whether it was a doable thing or not. And I wanted to get a sense of what a timeline was. So I came in basically saying, as I remembered anyway, basically saying like, can I do this? Is this a thing that people do? How long does it take? And I'm sure I came across as completely clueless because I was. I had no
Hmm.
sense of anything. And I didn't know you guys at all. And I remember it was both surprising and encouraging at once. It was both, yeah, there was a push and a pull in that conversation because you were very blunt. When I said, like, can I do this in a year? And your answer was basically, I don't know. I don't know you. You might be
Yeah,
terrible.
yeah, yeah,
And I was like, oh, you know what?
yeah. Maybe not.
Maybe not. You might not ever be able to do it. I don't know
Yeah.
what your timeline is. It depends on whether
Well,
you suck or not.
I think so. So my reaction was that based on the way you're thinking about it now, the odds are not very good because built into your line of questioning for me is the assumption that it was going to happen and it's just a matter of how much time.
Uh,
And I do think
uh,
that is an understandable position if you take the marketing of other companies at face value.
right.
But if you think about it a little bit harder and you look at the reality of just the, success rates of these things, even in a computer science degree, not everyone,
Yeah.
even at prestigious schools, not everyone gets what they want at the end.
Yeah, totally.
There is a failure rate, and the failure rate varies. And we were in a period, 2024, where the failure rate was quite high.
Yeah.
Um, and the default is that most people fail. And so it's frustrating because I felt like you had come in with this 2015 mentality where, frankly, underqualified people that can't program could get a job, and that did happen.
Yeah.
And you're bringing that stupid mentality into today, and it was just
Yeah.
totally inappropriate. And I
Yeah.
just felt like, wow, I need to shake this man into like, reality. And that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
What I was trying to say, the message was basically
Yeah.
think about things in a completely different way.
Yeah.
Based on what I know about you, we have no idea if this will work, and
Yeah.
it maybe largely won't. The
Yeah.
only thing that will give us a sense is if we have more data about you and we
Yeah.
see what you can do.
Yeah. And like I say, it was a surprising answer. And it was a refreshing answer. At least, I mean, it was initially kind of, it did shake me. Like
Mhm.
that
Yep.
worked. But in retrospect, I was like, this is great. I am so used to being fed this marketing copy,
Hmm.
like where they're going to guarantee you success because they want you to pay up. Now I've
Right.
got these teachers who are willing to say you might not do it. Like it just might not work. Be honest about that. Be realistic about this. And even if it does work, the other thing that I remember that stuck with me in that conversation is you gave me a really concrete rundown of the kinds of jobs that could be available. Maybe you can do a proper software engineering job. Uh, if not, maybe you can do a glorified technical support job.
Yep.
And like there are many places to land in this world. Hopefully, we can get you to one of them. But it all depends on whether you're any good, and we don't have any data on that. So I can't say. And that was just so much more honest than anything else I'd been getting.
Yeah, I think another aspect of it is that we have seen so much data that certainly certain things will change your odds. Like you have a PhD, you're a professor, you've accomplished things, but that doesn't mean that you'll succeed.
Right.
We have had students that have gone to Yale and Harvard and can't adjust to the programming mindset.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, if you went to an Ivy League school, your odds are higher, but they're still not guaranteed. And
Yeah.
it depends on, what actually happens. And so in your case, and I think you had felt this too, you expected, given your background, that we would be like, oh yeah, you're gonna do great. And your odds are higher, given that we didn't know anything about you than the average person we would meet, but they still weren't that. They were still in this today's market. They're still not very high,
Yeah.
to be frank. Um, and so, we tried to. I think if you're not honest with people about where they're at, they can't do their best work.
100%.
Um, in a couple ways, right? You tell people that they're going to succeed when they're not. And then what they think is that they can operate at a, incompetent level, thinking that good things will happen.
Hmm.
And like obviously that's not going to work. Even for students that do really well, they're still like, not doing things correctly.
Yeah.
And so if you want to get to, a job versus, the top tier one level companies, you still need to be very clear-headed about where your
Yeah.
weaknesses are. And so like
Yeah.
our mentality is just very different. One, I think because being honest is the right thing to do, but as a teaching like matter, you need to know where you're at
Yeah.
in order to do the right thing and progress in the right way.
Yeah, and this
Um,
became such a defining aspect of my experience with Watch and Code that I don't think that I've ever, like literally ever, had teachers who were more direct with me about my weaknesses. I don't think that I've ever had to confront my confront my failures in quite so direct a way. Like I think you guys both just in terms of your personalities, but also in terms of the system that you've designed, the curriculum that you've designed, the structure that you've set up, kind of forces you to come face to face with those things and correct them very quickly. And it was like rocket fuel for me. Like it was so refreshing to have teachers who actually cared about you getting better and so were willing to name the things that were making you worse as quickly as directly as possible to make sure that those things were fixed and so you could keep moving on like that has shown up the whole way through for me. I really think I mentioned this to you before, but like the selling point for me was early on. I was taking a couple of your quizzes, and I failed them. I haven't failed a quiz since I was 8. I don't know. Like I don't remember failing quizzes. That's not an experience that I've had, and failing these quizzes was kind of proof that you guys were going to identify problems in my thinking in a way that nothing else had been willing to do.
mhm. Yeah, I think it reminds me a lot about why you left academia because there's a parallel into why I never went into it.
Mm.
because I wanted to, obviously I wanted to become a teacher, but I knew that the structure, having been in it myself, even in a good version of it, supposedly, is that the structure is not set up for students to fail. And but
Yeah,
failure is a necessary part of learning, right? You're always constantly
absolutely.
having students pass. You want the high graduation rate. If they fail, they might drop out, not pay the tuition, all sorts of
Exactly.
things.
Yep.
And so our structure is specifically designed to allow failure to happen in the most
Yeah.
productive way. And it's shocking to people because it's so rare, right?
Yeah.
If you think of even a product like FreeCodeCamp or Codecademy, like they care a lot about retention, which is the percentage of people that get from one screen to another.
Yep.
If you are optimizing for retention, right, you are going to optimize for retention. People are going to get to the next page.
Yeah.
But maybe they shouldn't. And when they
Yeah.
shouldn't, you should stop them.
Exactly.
Um, then once you got into the program and actually started, learning with us,
Hmm.
doing the assessments, stuff like that, how was your experience? Because I think you had told me that at that time, you were doing the common thing a lot of people do, that they're working on multiple resources at the same time. You were doing us, but you were still doing the Odin project, maybe other stuff too. So how did that go and how did that change over time?
So there were kind of two parallel experiences that helped me kind of lock in to you guys because you're right. At the beginning, I was kind of still scattered. I was doing a lot of different stuff. I was still working on the Odin project. I guess it was mainly the Odin project, and you guys were the main kind of structured things. Then I was kind of just toying around with other little mini projects, tutorials, whatever at the same time. But there were two things that helped me kind of lock into watching code. One was your Friday sessions where, different students come together to like do some kind of collective problem solving and compare notes. And I was really impressed with some of the other students. Like I had some experiences up front where, we jumped in, you gave us a problem, and I couldn't do anything with it. I had no idea what to do and just felt like I was immediately running into a brick wall. And then I got to watch these other students get them done and get them done pretty effectively. And just seeing that gap and knowing that you had gotten them there was really encouraging. Like I had somebody to look up to. I had somebody, I had like a goal to reach.
Well,
And then,
I think I guess I'm wondering what your reaction was to this because right now it seems like I'm numb to it and maybe you are too.
yeah,
But probably maybe some days the majority of the people on Fridays are professional software engineers
yeah,
already,
oh
right?
yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah. So I felt very out of place. And in some ways a little bit alienated. Like it was intimidating. Alienated is not the right word. Intimidating is what it felt. But all of the other students were super supportive, and you guys were super supportive. So it made it feel like, okay, no, that's an accomplishable thing.
hmm
This is a gap that can be bridged. Yeah, I think the other side was just the clarity of the curriculum. It became clear very quickly that the problems that you were giving us to do were very thoughtfully organized and graduated to kind of move us from one thing to the next. And none of the other resources that I was using felt like that. All of the other resources, I mean, there's some broad sense of like, this is easy, this is hard. But for the most part, it's just like do it all at once and figure it out. And so the thoughtfulness about the structure of the curriculum was the other thing that kind of gradually led me to buy in. So within 3 or 4 weeks, I had just given up on everything else and just doubled down on watching code.
While all this was going on, you were working full time at the university and you're also a dad. What
Mm.
was it like to actually learn with all of that going on?
You know, I I was really nervous about this at first. Like, how do I maintain the full-time job? How do I live my life and spin up a totally new set of skills for a totally new career at the same time? And I think I'd been a little bit primed by the other resources that I had interacted with to think it was going to be basically impossible. Like you've got the boot camp model in your head where you've just got 6 to 8 weeks full time. We'll make you the best programmer ever, whatever. And I didn't have that. And I didn't know how it was going to be manageable. But it turned out that the way that you have structured the curriculum made it shockingly manageable. Uh, you can submit a problem, you get feedback on that problem by the next day, and then only then are you allowed to look any farther forward in the curriculum. This was kind of a paradigm
If
shift.
you pass.
If you pass, and if you don't pass, you get to stick on that problem for days at a time. Exactly. It was a big paradigm shift. It forced a kind of slow down for me that was hard at the beginning, but turned out to be super, super important, I think, to my learning process and to my learning experience. It felt at first, and I think a lot of students feel this way, like the best way to learn is to get more, 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 is to like really chase the volume, really chase the quantity. And you guys have really thoughtfully forced people to slow down and focus on just the next thing at a time until you've got it, and to milk every bit of learning that you can out of each step in the process. And so because of the way you've built it, it's really manageable. Like you don't need all day to do it. You need regular, consistent chunks of time when you can think hard and master one thing before moving on to the next. And I think over time, it's been way faster than doing things in the other way. But from the day to day is shockingly manageable.
I think this way is counterintuitively faster
Yeah, absolutely.
because you do everything you it's not quite accurate to say you do everything once and then you like fully grasp it, but you certainly minimize it where it approaches
Yeah,
once if you're doing it the
yeah,
right way versus like having to constantly like fill in gaps that you don't even realize are there and you
yeah,
just feel like you're spinning your wheels and you don't make progress because things still aren't making sense. If you do things in a certain way, like you can pull things apart fully where they all do make sense.
yeah.
And then another thing I just wanted to add is that the reason we structured it this way, and it's a tough lesson to process just because it's so different than every other message you're getting, is that the default thing that we're trying to battle that almost everyone falls into and is the most likely outcome is that you do a bunch of stuff with nothing to show for it.
Hmm.
And you have all this quantity, but then at the end of the day, you ask yourself, what was the point of
Am I
it?
any better? Did
And
I
you're not. And then
you're
you
not.
go hunt for the next resource thinking that this
That's
net
the
a little
one.
bit more quantity is going to change things. No,
Yeah,
no, I think the reason that it's not working for you is the way you're doing things is fundamentally broken.
yeah, yeah. That's absolutely right. It takes a kind of trust that to really believe that the curriculum is going to get you there. And I do think that one of the problems in the industry more broadly, and in the kind of programming ed industry more broadly, is that a lot of places don't earn that trust, right? So like you end up kind of you learn that like most of these places are not trustworthy. They're really not going to get you where you need to go. So you kind of have to supplement everything.
I'm not sure I would call it trustworthy. I think a lot of people have good intentions, but they're just not effective because they're not testing the stuff
Yeah.
in the same way that we're testing, right? Like as soon as we are iterating the curriculum based on the performance of the students
Yeah.
and
That
adjusting it
actually
based on that, not based on some stupid idea we have or some dogma that we believe
Yeah.
or don't believe. It's all based on competence and what is driving that. So it's not a trustworthiness. I think it's just like, our approach is different.
Well, to me, that's what makes it trustworthy is that I know you actually are iterating it on the basis of what actually works. And you're checking. You're like very concretely paying attention to that in a way that a lot of folks don't. And you feel it. It makes a difference.
One thing we encourage all of our students to do is to build a project independently.
Mhm.
And in doing so, there's like a tiering to this, right? Like the top tier students can build a product that actually gets users and possibly revenue. The next tier is working on some well-known open source project. And then, the worst tier is I did a Yelp clone copied from a Udemy tutorial. If
Mhm.
that's what you're doing, I would maybe, it's arguably worse than doing nothing. And so there's this tiering to it. How did you end up approaching the project? Because I think at the outset, when you were going to make a project, I described this tiering to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but how did you
Wow.
actually process that?
Well, I had a few false starts, I think. Like my first instinct was to try to build something that I could use in teaching. And I did something, as a very first project, like a little practice tracker for some of my students and used it, and it was fine as a first project, but it wasn't going to go anywhere and it felt a little bit toyish. Another false start was I had a kind of passing opportunity to jump on a group kind of civic coding project. Like there was a uh, I don't even remember what the project was anymore, but somehow like tying into government data and doing some kind of public service coding project
Yeah.
that I thought would be interesting. But I remember you discouraged me from a little bit, mainly because there's so much extra overhead of like learning to work with this kind of team and this
Yeah.
kind of data that it would have made it less effective
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
learning project.
I think this is an interesting point. I just want to add that a lot of people they look for opportunities like this, but they can work out, but they're unlikely to.
Yeah,
The common case is that the other people become a bottleneck
right,
that you can't control, right?
right.
And if the more competent you are, the less incentive you have to work with others. I think if you're going to be the dead weight on the team, there's more incentive to be in the
Sure.
group
Yeah,
because then you'll be carried. But
yeah,
right, but looking at your trajectory, you were not going to be the dead weight. You were going to be carrying other people that were dead weight. And so that's why we discouraged you from doing
yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, and it was great. I mean, it really helped to have a project that eventually that I could focus on that was just me, that I could kind of control from end to end, not only because it removed some of those bottlenecks, but also because it pushed me to understand kind of every aspect of a project in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise had to do. So what I eventually landed on was working on this contest platform for newspapers. Uh, my wife works in newspapers and they run these contests every year, and I knew her experience with a certain piece of software. I thought that I could at least do as well, if not do better. I think one of the things that worked in my favor is I dramatically underestimated how complicated the project would have been was going to be at the very beginning. So I dove in and it seemed plausible, and I started building out this core functionality, the kind of voting functionality for this thing, and and then just kind of uh, kept stepping it down the line. We had some interesting conversations early on. It was very, very hard to get going. I was underestimating how complex it would be. It still felt too complex at the beginning. It was the biggest thing that I'd ever tried to build. I was trying to build it in all the kind of quote unquote modern ways with all of the tools that everybody on the internet talks about. And I was just running into brick wall after brick wall. And we had a really important conversation early on where you just said, stop with all the tooling, basically. Like simplify, simplify, simplify. Use the things that you actually need to get this project done. Dump everything else. Don't add unnecessary complexity to it. Just get something going. And I mean, we could talk about the specific kind of technical decisions there if you want, but it's probably unnecessary detail. It's really just like once I was able to dump all of that stuff and focus on just like building a thing that works. Uh,
Well, I think
took
more
off.
specifically, in our web track, what our argument was is that everything you need to build this thing is there. Just
Yeah,
use that stuff.
yeah,
And you were
exactly.
introducing things like, I don't know, like Next.js and
Yeah, exactly. I
the
mean,
whatever trendy
yeah,
dumb thing that's gonna die in 2 years.
yeah, exactly,
And like
exactly.
you're doing all those things and like having them combine in silly ways and just like holding the project back.
Yeah, exactly.
But it required, I remember I think I told you maybe 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times to stop doing that until there was one day I just said it kind of rudely. And And then finally it happened.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the way I said it, or it was the number of times that I'd said it.
Well, I think in my defense, I think I dropped something every time. Like, you said I dropped a little bit, and you said I dropped a little bit more. You said it again, I dropped a little bit more until finally it was just like, no, look, you've got everything you need. Just build it with this stuff, and I did, and it started moving so much faster.
I guess what was behind the resistance, and
I think
once it happened, why do you think it worked a lot better than you thought it would?
yeah, it
Why
was
do you
the
think that
same.
was?
It was the same transition that happened with the algorithms curriculum at the beginning, right? Like you start with too much and you end up having to pare it down. Like at the beginning, it felt necessary with the curriculum. It felt necessary to supplement with the Odin Project and this other thing because it feels like you need all of it. Uh,
Hmm.
that felt kind of culturally, I think that feels like an obligation. You're supposed to know it all. And when you're building this thing, you're supposed to build it with all of these fancy tools that are, at the
Right.
top of whatever.
And they're in job
They're
descriptions
in job
too. Yeah.
descriptions, exactly, exactly. And it that just feels like an obligation. And so it took a minute to realize that the simpler, more focused, more direct approach was actually also the more effective approach.
Right. But it is a contrarian approach. It shouldn't be. But like the tooling choices we use, they're so simple that
Yeah,
it would be hard to find another teacher that uses these
yeah,
technologies. Like
yeah,
it's kind of unheard of.
yeah.
And so I think that makes it hard too, because like all these people are saying this, and we're saying
Right.
stuff that
Yeah,
no one
the
else is
industry
saying.
kind of maximalist frameworks, or at least it
Hmm.
has been for a while. Maybe the pendulum's
Right.
swinging, but it's been maximalist frameworks kind of culture. And here I had y'all's voice in my head being like, no, simple, simple, simple.
There was a conversation where I said that I think things are going to work out. And it took me a long time to say this. I think you had asked me probably at various times. I kind of hinted what I thought my assessment was, and I wasn't shy about that. But there was a moment where I was like, okay, I think you're definitely going to be okay. And that moment for me was when your project for newspapers became a real business where
Mm.
you're now it makes thousands of dollars annually and has real enterprise customers. Not everyone needs to reach that bar to, I think, be sure that they are going to make it, but certainly that put me at ease that it was going to go smoothly. And then kind of from there, you started applying. I guess what was the difference between how you thought the job search would go and how it actually went?
So I started applying for jobs in earnest in the spring of 2025. I was pretty nervous about it. I had very little context for what that was going to be like going in, but it went surprisingly smoothly. I got two automated interviews early on, didn't do especially well on those, and they didn't go anywhere. Then I got farther into the process with two other companies with 37 Signals first, and then I made it to the second round interviews, and then at Pinterest, obviously, I made it the whole way through. And so, beginning to end the process, I was applying for 4 months. I applied to 12 total jobs, and got one.
I remember the first two automated interviews you had were for Shopify and JP Morgan. You didn't do very well.
Yeah,
And I remember us having a conversation about that where I think we're both disappointed because I think that in retrospect you could have
could have
done
easily done it.
those.
Yeah, yeah. It's just a
But then
psychological hurdle, like it was just a new experience, and it took a minute to get over that too.
but then I remember I mean maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but I think you went back and did the like reviewed the curriculum, reviewed the problems in a
Yeah,
way that was a lot different than you had before.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, can you tell us about like you kind of had a oh crap moment and then you went off and did something about it versus just like oh hope it will go better
Yeah.
next time.
Yeah, no,
What did you actually do?
there was an interesting pivot moment there again. In some ways, for a moment, I kind of reverted and I thought, okay, I need more resources. I went back to that place in my head. Maybe I need to do LeetCode. I'd done no LeetCode this entire process. And everybody said, you're supposed to be drilling LeetCode or else you're screwed. You're never going to get through these things. Maybe I need to do LeetCode. Maybe you need to do these exercises from this book. And for I don't know, a couple of days, I convinced myself that's what I needed to do and started going down that path. And then caught myself and said, hold on, no, I'm going to go back to what has been working this whole time. And I went back actually to the problem solving guide. Like I went all the way back to the very beginning and really thought about process. Because I think what had held me up in the Shopify interview in particular is that I had just let myself get less methodical. And by going back to the kind of foundations of the curriculum and then actually just reworking a number of problems in the curriculum, I was able to kind of just level myself out again. I doubled back down on Friday problems, making sure that I was really focusing on process there. And that kind of brought me back into the alignment to to be able to perform at the level that I knew I was capable of performing at in those interviews.
The Friday problems are specifically designed to kind of calibrate you to doing well in interviews.
Yeah,
And I've said this to you a billion times. If you can cut through Friday problems efficiently, you will do well in interviews. And so
yeah,
if you want one metric, you have to be honest with yourself. You can ask us for our assessment of things. That's the one thing you want to pay attention to. And so, yeah, doing the Friday problems in a more serious way, following up on them in case you mess something up,
yeah,
because with these issues, we've had so many conversations about this. The issues tend to be recurring.
yeah,
Like, the same problem comes up
absolutely.
again, and like
Yeah,
you've got to squash that,
yeah,
and then you won't have that problem again. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people don't they they could run up against the same thing that you did, which is they did poorly in the first few. That's normal. The first few are the hardest. But the issue is that they don't adjust correctly.
right.
They don't diagnose the issue correctly, and then they get into a cycle where the performance does not improve, and they
Yeah,
don't know why.
yeah.
And so I think that's a key thing that you did differently. So looking back now on the last year, what do you think are some of the few key things that made the biggest difference?
Mm. I think honestly, the most important thing has just been you and Lily being in regular conversation with you guys. It is having somebody who is paying attention and cares about your progress, having somebody who's willing to guide you in the right direction when you go off course, having someone who is willing to give honest, like genuinely honest feedback about where you are in your development is utterly invaluable and incredibly hard to find. Most people just want to make you feel good. Most people just want to make a buck and move on. Uh, Most people have other things to worry about. They just don't care if you're good or not, right? So there's, I, yeah, we've
Well, it's
talked about
tough. There's a cost it's tough news to deliver.
it's tough news to deliver. That's the thing too. Yeah, somebody's got to have the temperament that's willing to tell you when you suck, and like that, it's hard to come by. It's what makes really good teachers so rare. And we've talked before, like what's the hypothetical, what happens in the hypothetical world where I never found watch and code? I don't know. I don't know if I would have gotten, maybe I would have gotten some kind of job. I definitely would not have gotten Pinterest. I don't know where I would be now, but I don't, I don't think I would have gotten anywhere close to where I am without you guys. And a lot of it was just, yeah, a regular conversation, that willingness to push me, even beside like the what I think is a genius curriculum that you guys have put together. It's really, really freaking good. But even that by itself, without you guys, would have gone nowhere. So I think that's the biggest thing. And I think there have been some really deep paradigm shifts for me too that have happened over this last year that that have really changed the way I think, not just about programming, but about a lot of different things. Thinking in terms of low volume, high quality work, uh, thinking in terms of kind of slow, methodical work that makes a bigger difference over the long term rather than trying to sprint through everything right away. Thinking in terms of kind of targeted experimentation with the code that I'm working on rather than just accepting that it magically works and moving on with my life. I mean, there have been a lot of really helpful kind of ground level point of view questions that you guys have helped me with a lot.
Thanks for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel.